Are you a professional pillow fighter? Or a 9-to-5 low-cost time travel agent? Or maybe real estate sales on Mars is your profession? It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you do, however complex or intricate, Monday.com can help you organize, orchestrate, and make it more efficient. Monday.com is the one centralized platform for everything work-related. And with Monday.com, work is just easier. Monday.com, for whatever you run. Go to Monday.com to learn more.
Well, I don't see the point in waiting any longer. So let's bring her out. The star attraction, the one you came to see. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Miss Judy Gold.
I just want to say, welcome to Kill Me Now, everyone. I just had a Kill Me Now moment where I pulled the microphone and bashed myself in the head. So it's really early in the morning, and that's how I started my day, so I know it's going to be a fucking shitty day. But you know what? Well, all right, many new things. First of all, I'm Judy Gold, as you know. Lauren is not here. Lauren, apparently, I just found out, is puking.
Really?
Well, yeah, Patrick's here.
Good morning, Judy.
Yeah, Patrick's the, what would you call yourself? Producer, operator?
Either one of those names works.
Okay, Patrick is a doormat, so this is going to work out really well. And my guest today, I have to tell you, I love all my guests, but I've admired this woman for a really long time, and we both did stand-up at a time when stand-up was the hottest thing in the world. And we both had different trajectories, but I think there was, I'm just being presumptuous here, but I think there was mutual respect.
Absolutely.
And, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but she's fucking hilarious. She's fucking hot. She's a mom. She's a photographer. She's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, the incredible Felicia Michaels!
Well, thank you. Wow.
That was a good intro, wasn't it?
I just want to say, Patrick, you always say I'm the man with the plan when someone asks you how do you go by.
I should have. I'm not that quick.
Yeah, obviously. You might be my new co-host, Patrick. Where are you from?
Not that quick?
Yeah.
I'm from Jersey.
Me too! Where?
Currently, I'm out by Wayne.
Oh, yeah,
Wayne?
I know Wayne.
Okay, yeah, I'm by Wayne.
And then, do you like Wayne?
Yeah, Wayne's nice.
Does he have a big cock?
That I don't know.
All right. And where'd you grow up?
Hudson County.
Uh-huh.
So it's a little different now.
Did you go to college?
I did go to college,
Where?
yes. Seton Hall.
Oh, yeah, my friend went to law school there. I became a Jew. Well, Patrick, welcome.
Thank you.
Felicia.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
I know. Be here.
I haven't seen you. Gotta be 10?
Maybe 10
10?
years. Yeah.
Maybe mid-2000s?
Yeah. I know you so long. I know you spit curl, Judy.
Oh,
Gold.
my God. What the fuck? Well, you know what's funny about the spit curl is that, I had it because I was doing a scene in acting class, and it was in the 20s. And then Michael Patrick King was at the Improv. And he's like, I have that curl. We had him on. And he said to me, I have that curl because if you had your own variety show in the 60s, you'd come sliding down a spit curl singing, "It's Judy's show!" And that was it.
Yeah.
And
you committed to that spit curl. I always admire that.
Yeah, I've committed to everything. Some good, some bad. But Felicia.
Yes.
First of all, your life is fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
Your voice is fascinating. And, it's so funny because I've known you for so long. And we actually have the same manager now.
Yeah.
And
yay for us.
I know, but it's also yay because I feel like he has good taste. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're like, oh my God, he represents that. What the fuck is wrong with him? But there's so much to talk about because your voice is sort of juvenile. And
Yes,
yet
it's lower now, though. It's
Yes, it
lower.
is.
Yeah, thank goodness for all that whiskey and weed.
yeah,
I've been
I'm not kidding. Do you
imbibing
still
it.
do you still smoke the weed?
Every once in a while.
Yeah, me too. So and it's so fascinating because you look at female comics, especially today, who are sexy, girly, not ashamed of their sexuality.
God bless their delicious little hearts.
Right. And as I said to Rick, our manager, I said, she was the first. You were the first. One of the first.
In that era.
Right.
In that era, yeah.
But that era, did you ever read the book Outliers?
No.
Oh, you got to read it.
Yeah?
And it talks about all these reasons people are successful. And I feel like, now that I'm reading this book, I feel like, we sometimes, I'm happy for everything we accomplished in the 90s and before we had families.
Mm-hmm.
But now, can you imagine being you then now?
Well,
God, that was a good sentence.
It's an interesting thing because when I started comedy, I became a regular right out of the gate at the Comedy Store in 1985.
Right.
And as you know, at that time, that was the time of Kinnison, and that was actually right before he hit it big. And, how lucky are we? Did you ever get to see Richard Pryor come in and work
Oh,
out?
my God.
How
All the
lucky
time.
are
I
we
used
that
to
we
be.
got to see that.
I used to be at the store when I moved to LA in like the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I was there the night Kinnison died. Were you there the night Kinnison died? I don't think you were there.
I was not
I was in
there,
the kitchen.
No, yeah.
It was unbelievable.
It was
He
amazing.
Pryor was, to see these people work out. Now, I, in the mid 80s, was at Catch a Rising Star watching Seinfeld and, Belzer, Paula. It was an incredible time, Leifer, because
Absolutely.
these people, we wrote. We sat and wrote all day. Our fucking my life revolved around calling on Tuesday and finding if I had any
right.
spots.
Yeah.
I would sit by that fucking phone.
yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
You'd sit by the phone. Oh, are they going to call? Are they going to call? Are they going to call? And sometimes you wouldn't get any spots that week, and
Right.
you want to kill yourself, and then you realize, oh, so and so's in from LA or that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You, Felicia Michaels, if you're not familiar with her.
And you're probably not.
That's not true. Felicia, very, very successful comic. American Comedy Award. You were on Full House, Showtime. I mean, my kids
I had a sweet ass little run. Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
and let me tell you something. My son Henry, who's 19. If he will kill me when I tell the story, but he was obsessed with Full House. And I think it was because, he's been raised by lesbians and those kids were raised by guys. I really think psychologically.
Yeah.
So we went to Florida over Christmas because we're Jewish, and we were on JetBlue. And it's Henry on the window, Ben in the middle. He's 6'4.5", but he has to sit in the middle because he's younger, and then me. And then my partner Elisa was on the aisle because she doesn't fucking want to have anything to do with us. And so Ben and I look at Henry. Ben hits me and says, look, and he's got the headphones on, the JetBlue headphones, actually his own, and he's watching Full House and like smiling and giggling. And he's like, Mr. I'll beat the shit out of you.
Yeah.
And it's like he couldn't, I still can't believe it. It was like the Brady Bunch for me, I guess, or something.
Yeah,
but the fact that it was all right. And
Well,
so
it's probably because when he grew up as a young child at that time, you guys at the time was considered an alternative lifestyle at the time. So I'm sure he identified with that family being an alternative family. Yeah.
It's interesting because my family was so dysfunctional, and I had a depressed mother and just elderly parents, really, like older parents, and all I wanted was to run away, to the Partridge Family house, to the Brady Bunch. Like, that was my survival. And it was so interesting to see. Because now kids, all they do is fucking look at their goddamn I can't. The fucking talk to me.
Yeah,
Like, you ask questions 20 fucking times. Answer the fucking question. What? So you are an army brat.
I'm an army brat. My mother was from Berlin, Germany, and they.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
Take care.
And they met when my father was stationed in Berlin as a young man in the late 50s. Mm-hmm. And they got married and came over. In fact, my father had to, before he was stationed in Berlin, my grandmother, and my father is strong Oklahoma stock. And my grandmother.
You are so not Jewish.
I know.
On so many fucking levels. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Did your mother talks like this?
She did, but I never heard her accent because it was my mother. Like when my
if you were Jewish, you would have heard the accent.
I actually said when my mother passed away, I turned to my cousin and said, "God, it's so weird that my mother never had an accent." And she's like, "Are you kidding me?" I can barely understand her because you don't hear it when you're a kid. You know.
Now, for all the Jews listening, I have to ask. She was in Berlin.
She was in Berlin. She was born in 1940, and my grandfather.
That's what we want to know. What's he doing?
My grandfather was 82 years old and on his third wife when my mother was born.
No fucking way.
Yeah, absolutely. And my grandmother.
So he wasn't in the war.
No, he
did
in
not
fact
serve.
Died at the hands of Nazis.
Okay, you are righteous.
Right, I can continue talking. Because he owned a private school, and all his teachers were Jewish. And then he had a brother who was also quite elderly, and my mother had cousins and aunts and uncles that actively hid Jews in their houses, and
I love you.
And my cousins were killed in concentration camps.
Oh my God, I am so sorry. That's terrible.
And so the Nazis came and took the Jewish teachers, and my grandfather was 82 or probably 84 at the time, tried to stop, and he was killed. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So how old? Your mother was born in 1940?
She was born in 1940.
And your grandfather was.
I'll tell you this story.
Yeah, go.
My mother was born in 1940, and because my grandfather had a little bit of money because of the private school, and a lot of people don't realize this, but Berlin was kind of firebombed. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like Dresden. And I asked my mother, "What is the first memory you have of being little?" And she said, "I remember my mother carrying me running down the streets and all the buildings being on fire and so hot that my eyelashes melted."
Oh my God!
That was her first memory, but they were very fortunate that they got to take a train to go stay in this village. This crazy story. And the village was at the bottom of Eagle's Nest.
No.
And my grandmother, who was very young, because she was the third wife, she got a job, literally because it was war inflation, washing dishes in the kitchen of the restaurant of the hotel.
Right.
And then became the manager of the hotel. But it was the hotel where all the officers would stay to go as they went up and down or however to go to Eagle's Nest. And I asked my aunt, who was 10 years older than my mother, and I said, what was the first time you realized how terrible the Nazis were? And she told me the story about because my grandmother was the manager of the kitchen, and because those officers stayed at that hotel.
And because she understood German. You know, I mean, she could hear their conversations.
Right.
Yeah.
They were all Germans, yeah. So that she was sent because the kitchen at that hotel got all the first dibs on all the good food because it was the officers of the Third Reich.
Right.
And that her mother had sent her into town, it must have been on the outskirts of town, to go get bread at the bakery. And when she was walking back with a basket full of bread, she came across a chain gang of Jews, and they were doing something on the road work.
Right.
And the officers, they were being guarded, not by officers, but by regular Joes, Germans in the army. And that one of the this makes me seriously tear up. And I recorded my aunt telling this story because I just thought that's what I should do because it was so crazy. But she said one of the Jews kind of broke away from the pack and grabbed at the bread because obviously they were starving, and the basket fell. And my aunt was probably 13, 14 at the time, and the officer came, shot the Jewish man dead. and picked up all the bread, even with the blood on it, put it back because they understood that where this food was going. And she said that was the moment I understood we were on the wrong side of history. And not only that, I went to back to the hotel and told my mother the story, and my mother slapped my face and said, "Don't ever mention this," because the fear. I'm not saying it's correct or incorrect, but when she told me that story, it obviously made me angry that she had to see that. It obviously made me angry that people had to live, the Jews go through this terrible, hideous thing. Made me so angry as a fucking woman.
Right.
That the women, who, no matter what side you were on, were meant to endure this kind of shit at the hands of ignorant and stupid fuck. I get really angry about that.
Oh, please.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And so she told me that story, and then she told me also a story about how after the war there was martial law, and that the civilians didn't want to believe that they backed this government that did these hideous things. And although a lot of them understood kind of what was going on, a lot of them weren't really in the know. It wasn't like today where someone could take a picture with their phone and then 30 minutes later, everybody in the world knows what's going on, obviously. So she said that the Americans from all those films you see of those death camps had to take the films, and one of the things of martial law is they made these makeshift tents where they showed these films, and everybody had to go see the films. And how people who were watching the films were crying and in agony, the ones that didn't understand what the fuck was really going on. And it's so
it's
intense.
Unbelievable because my mother, she was born in 1922, and she was supposed to go to Berlin
Jesus,
for her.
You were the last egg.
Oh, please. And my father was 48 when I was born. So, wait, your grandfather must 18 what?
I don't know. He was 82 when my mother was born.
In 1940. So that's 40, and then you have 42. Oh, my God.
Yeah. When you
1858?
Isn't
my
that crazy?
Grandparents were born in 1882, 1888, 1892, and 1896. And I say that on stage, and people are like, I'm like, what the fuck is funny about that?
Right.
But it's interesting because my mother's supposed to go to Berlin, because Berlin was the fucking bomb. I'm not, no pun intended, but it was the center of fashion and culture and and she was
Berlin in the 20s and early 30s, absolutely.
So she was supposed to go for her 16th birthday, 1938, and they couldn't. And I just I want to go back. I want to go. I want to see this, but it's so interesting because there were so many people who did know, who were, you look, you go to the concentration, you see that they're right there. So, but there was, I think there were people who were ignorant about, how does the fact that your mother has to see someone shot,
it was my aunt.
Your aunt.
It was my
All
aunt,
right, same thing.
Yeah. But it's an interesting question when you really start thinking about, like I read yesterday that there was a guard in one of the concentration camps.
Now 94.
94 and being put through the whole process of court and all that.
He was a guard at
Auschwitz. And then, and obviously terrible.
Right.
No excuse, absolutely whatsoever. But then when you start thinking, if you're a 19-year-old guy and you're living in this society, you're taken away from your family to serve in the army or whatever the fuck you were doing. What would you do at that time? It's an interesting moral dilemma. Obviously, you and I would, obviously you, but anybody would say you wouldn't be a part of that.
Right.
But there wasn't a process of sticking your hand up necessarily when you're at the age of 18, 19, 20. No excuse. He should be obviously, absolutely put on trial. But then it's not like today where people talk about everything.
Right.
Was it spoken about? What, what could you do if you didn't want to participate?
Right.
What could you do? Obviously, I would like to think I would have got the fuck out of there, or I would have done what my forebears would have done and hid Jews in my apartment, even given up their lives
these
to do
guys
it.
could have done that too. I mean, there were plenty of them that didn't do it and that witnessed this and participated in it and didn't run away.
Right.
And there are so many Jews that did run away. There was an underground. I'm sorry, but
I'm not saying it as a defense.
I can't believe this is a fucking comedy podcast.
I know. No, these are the best ones when you don't really talk about comedy.
I know. No, that's what I
don't mean it as like a defense of him. I mean it as, God, when so many things were not discussed.
Right.
And the unluck of being born in a family where you didn't have intellectuals who could have a big fucking discussion about what is right and what is wrong.
Right.
And, it makes you realize how much we have changed in humanity.
Right. But now, look at the fucking Trump. Look at these people.
I know.
We're going backwards, Felicia.
Yeah, I would think so.
Wait, so you're an army brat.
I'm an army brat. Sorry.
So no, I love it.
Digress.
So your father was in Berlin, met your mother.
Met my mother.
Where'd they meet?
I think my father was, he's from Oklahoma, so he used to...
That's okay! Get it, Patrick?
I get it.
Yeah.
And so I think they met where he was in a little army band like Elvis, but not Elvis. He was a very handsome man. And I think they met at a show that he was doing. They had little side gigs or whatever. And they met and they got married. And
how old were they when they got married?
I think, 21.
Right.
Yeah,
Can you fucking imagine?
I can't even imagine.
Like, I have cousins who got married even when my friends' kids now are like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah,
Ew.
it's terrible.
Yeah, go.
Yeah. So they met, and my grandmother on my father's side told him, if you go to Germany, you do not come back with a German wife, because people didn't like the Germans, obviously.
Course.
You know what I mean?
Hi, I'm Felicia's mother, and how is she doing in second grade?
Yeah. And so my father wrote my grandmother and told him that she was pregnant. And then,
that is disgusting.
I know, that he had to marry her. Mm-hmm. And then when they came back to the
Can't
States...
believe they had premarital sex.
I know. My grandmother was like, where's the baby? And they're like that she wasn't pregnant. And so he got in trouble by his mother. But
he did it. Yeah. So, all right.
And my stepmother, also German.
What is with your father?
I know.
What is wrong with him?
He likes a bossy bitch, I guess.
I can't believe it. He could have someone, he's a little... your house must have been so clean, no?
Pretty much.
Yeah. OCD.
Yeah.
So you went from... what was the longest you stayed in one place as a child?
I would have to say maybe 2 or 3 years growing up, because now... when they understand in the service that you can't just be uprooting people,
right?
Every
especially
2 to 3 years.
the kids.
Yeah, it's bad for the kids, and so I moved around every 2 to 3 years and back and forth. And my dad did 2 tours of Vietnam. And,
oh my God!
We were in Northern California in Stockton at that time.
Fun.
And, yeah. So, I mean, it was...
So what was it like?
It did prepare me for comedy.
Oh, please, yeah.
I had a drink last night with David Feldman, and he was like...
What? I was fucking sitting at home.
Well, you should have been there. Funniest guy on the planet.
Fuck him. He was on the podcast.
He's an awesome guy.
I love him.
And he was like, God, comedy for you must have been so hard back in the day. And I was like, no, I grew up in, an army brat where we moved around all the time. So to me, it was normal business.
Right.
Yeah.
I stayed at one place, and every time I'd have to, I went on we went on the road. Right. There were so many comics who either...
There were that many women that did.
That said, and I just wanted to be a good comic. It's like when I think of Mitch Hedberg, who you were really close with, I think of, he just wanted to be a comic.
He just wanted to be a comic.
And I wanted to be a great comic.
Nobody wants to be just a fucking comic anymore.
It's Judah was on, and he's like, I'm doing stand-up, and people are stopping me like, oh, what are you working on? He's like, stand-up, and he's like, and what else? He's like, stand up. What the fuck? What else do I have to? It's unbelievable. It's like you're a loser if you're. All right. So what was it?
Shifted because before when we did stand up, because I do a lot of photography and all that kind of stuff.
I know.
And people would say, or I had a manager who would say, yeah, don't talk about that photography thing. This is back in the day.
Yeah.
Just talk about your stand up because people are going to think you're not
serious
about your stand up. And now people are like, no, don't talk about your stand up. Talk about everything else.
Right. But it was okay for guys to talk about all the other shit. Oh, I was a lawyer and I did this and blah, blah, blah. Felicia.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a sponsor, which is very exciting.
That's awesome.
So, and I kind of love this sponsor. All right, you know how important a mattress is. Like, I hate to sound like a fucking
They're
commercial.
super important.
But I got to tell you, like, if I'm in a hotel and it has a shitty mattress, I'm done. I'm like, my neck hurt, my back, like I can't. And then you go home and you're sleeping on a good, it's like.
Right. I hear you.
And so there's this new company called Leesa, Leesa, Leesa. And they're like the Warby Parker of mattresses. So you order the mattress and it's only online. And they start at $525, which is really good. And it's one of those foam ones. You know, the ones that are like, that keep you cool. Like my son Ben, I swear to God, sleeps at the window. It's 19 degrees outside and sweats all the time. So it has like 3 layers of foam, and it makes you not. A lot of foam mattresses make you sweat. So this one doesn't make you sweat, and it has that like memory foam thing for the body contour. I know you like that.
Yeah.
I know you like that. Anyway, and the other great thing is after each 10 mattresses they sell, they donate one.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Isn't that to plant 1 million mattresses? We also plant one tree. Oh, they plant one tree for every mattress sold, pledging to plant 1 million mattresses by I love how they write 1 million mattresses. It's 1 million trees, you fucking idiots. Anyway, the Wall Street Journal called them the Uber of mattresses. I mean, they're really good. They're like those you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
Anyway, so get this. This is how important I am now. If you go to Leesa.com, Leesa, and you use the promo code GOLD, I can't say code GOLD, 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 because what's my last name?
Right, gold.
You're so good at this. I love it. They will get $75 off. That's pretty damn good. $75 off.
A tree gets planted and one gets donated.
Yep.
Holy cow.
It's unbelievable. And it's a great mattress. It's only online. So go to Leesa, Leesa.com. Get a really fucking, and it's delivered to your door in a box. I swear to God. And I have a friend who did this, and you open the box and it like comes out and it just blows up. Like, it's amazing.
Wow.
It's a great mattress because I've slept on one by myself. So go to Leesa.com, plant some trees, help the environment, use the code GOLD, GOLD, and you'll get $75 off. And sweet dreams, ladies and gentlemen. So, what was it like when you're a kid and you move and you have to go into the lunchroom as the new kid?
Well, because you're in a situation where because you're going to schools that predominantly have military children, so you're in the same boat with everyone else. So even though it was difficult, it wasn't as difficult. And sometimes you would go to school with someone that you knew in second grade in Berlin, Germany, or Munich, and then you would see him in 8th grade at outside Fort Carson near Colorado Springs. You'd be like, oh yeah, you.
Oh, so, this is good, Dankeschön. So how? What is your who? All right. Why can't I this menopause shit? Even though I have my period, I have my period.
You do,
and I'm 53 years old.
Wow.
Okay.
God, you're fucking bragging. I love it.
Thank you very much. Your oldest friend, the friend you've had for the longest. How many years is that? And when did you meet? Your oldest, the person you've known the longest.
Well, this is the one thing I'm going to get to that answer, but I'm going to say when you grow up as an Army brat, especially back in the day, I don't have a lot of childhood friends.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right. So I would say my oldest friend was a girl I met in a strip club when I was 18.
We're getting to that, ladies and
Yes.
gentlemen. We're getting to that very soon.
Comedian Alan Steven.
Oh, yes!
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I wondered who the comedian was.
Yeah.
But,
He's my bro.
what are you doing in the strip club? So, your father left.
My father remarried,
With your brother.
Took my brother, and
What was that? Like, he's a guy, he's coming with me, or?
it pretty much was. It pretty much was. And my mother had a lot of mental issues, and there was a reason she wanted to get the fuck out of Germany, and there was a
Right.
reason her family was like, "You should get the fuck out of Germany."
Well, wouldn't you have mental issues if you grew up during that time
Right,
period?
but she had a lot of absolutely
Right.
number one, but number two, she had a lot of emotional and mental problems.
Right.
And I, from the age of around 11, 12, it was just my mother and myself.
Ugh, and you had to take care of her.
And I had to take care of my mother, and we were on welfare because my father didn't pay child support. Not that he made a lot of money, but back then men could,
Yeah, of
beat
course.
the system. And so I grew up on welfare from about the age of 11 or probably 12,
Mm-hmm.
and and then my mother had a massive stroke
Oh, my God, I
Yeah.
can't.
and was in a wheelchair.
Oh, my God.
And she
How old were you when she had the massive stroke?
I would say I was around 14.
Oh, my God, I can't even believe you can talk. Go.
And but my mother also had Crohn's disease.
Oh, God.
And in that
You
time,
sure she's not Jewish?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
In that time, they didn't know exactly. In the 70s, it was pretty much like Frankenstein how they treated Crohn's disease.
Right.
And it didn't help her because she had emotional and mental issues that at that time people were like, no, it's not a physical thing. You're bringing that on by being crazy. So the responsibility of the disease was so laid on her, and it didn't help
And
her
here you are.
emotionally. Yeah.
You're a teenage girl trying to take
Yeah.
care of a sick woman. And your father knew she had a stroke and all that, right?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
But he was stationed then in back in Germany, so
So your brother had a completely different upbringing than you.
a completely different upbringing that I did. My brother also had a lot of problems too, emotional and mental, and
Right.
genetically, I think, given to him, of course, by my mother. Not given, but to be, sadly.
So you sort of, quote unquote, are kind of the lucky one.
You know what? Because my brother passed when.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, quite a while ago, and the amount of guilt that you have, A, when your co-witness in life
Right.
keels over, but B, the guilt of why
Survivor guilt.
Yeah, why did he have all these issues and I didn't? And I'm mentally pretty sound.
Right.
And just realizing that as a young kid, because it was, I would say it was pretty apparent when he was younger that he had problems.
Right.
And I don't think my dad really understood, and he took the wrong one.
Yeah, right.
But when he took me, he told my mother, I'm going to, I think he left me because he felt he had to leave her someone. So she
And
wouldn't
you
be
were
all alone.
probably, he probably
Right.
knew instinctively you were the
Right.
strong one.
And quite honestly, my mother was a black sheep in the family on her side, and quite honestly, her family was done with her because
Right.
to them, she married an American. And she betrayed the fatherland. The fatherland! So.
Oh, my
so
God,
they were like,
this
"You're on
story.
your own, girly girl." Yeah. So we were absolutely left alone, and my mother was very suicidal and tried to kill herself many times. I remember coming home from school, and she'd be all passed out with pills all over the place.
Oh, my God, you poor thing!
No, I don't. You know what? That's the hardest thing about sharing a story of yourself when you grow up in poverty, when you grow up with an ill parent, is the look in people's eyes, like the fucking look you have now of complete empathy, which is great that you have that ability to feel empathy for other people's pain. But that's the most uncomfortable about unburdening
Right,
yourself.
because you are a survivor and you look at it, you've processed the whole thing.
Right.
I do that. I feel that too.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I wasn't on welfare. Your story is so intense, but the feelings, my feeling of getting up every single morning, going to school and being called Bigfoot and Sasquatch every 5 fucking minutes, that I can't walk down the hallway, that kids are pushing me again, that, it's...
Now I'm having that look for you.
Well,
I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Me.
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, it's fine.
Right.
But, that everyday humiliation of... the feeling is as intense. The situation is different, and I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me.
Right. I can't say that I felt humiliated as a child because of that, but I can.
Right. No, I don't think it is.
But for you, for you, because that must have been terrible. But I can say that then people didn't see you; they just saw your circumstance.
Right.
They didn't see you, and it got to the point where I can be a very callous person sometimes, and that's why comedy is so wonderful for me.
Yes.
But where I remember coming home after several attempts that my mother would try to do, and judging like, you know what, I think I can finish my math homework before I call the ambulance. You know what I mean? Like, that's the mind of a child. You know what I mean? I got a test tomorrow. Right. I got to get on this math homework.
It's so amazing that you were into school.
Right. Well, because I didn't have to be home then.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I love my mother with everything in my heart.
Of course.
So, but being able to talk about this. Oh, and by the way, the first time in my life, I'm actually able to talk about it.
Right.
Because I kept it hidden for so long.
Right.
When people saw me, because I'm blonde-haired, blue-eyed, they'd be like, "Oh, you must have been a cheerleader in high school."
Oh, I know. Right.
And I got a lot of shit because people would presume that about me or assume that about me, and so not true.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so funny, because everyone does have a story, and you don't know what. That's why your one-person show that you're working on is going to be so fucking amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Because what you see is not what you get.
Right.
And that's the same, I think, with most comedians.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But every once in a while, you see what you get.
I know. And then you're like, this one's a hack. But
true that.
So you were a good student.
You know what? I was not an A student. I was a solid B student. But I had a lot of stuff going on. And
really?
Also at that time with Crohn's disease, my mother had I bet by the time I was 14, probably 20 operations all over her body for other things too, as well as Crohn's. And she had an ileostomy, and it was so archaic.
Right.
And at that time, and she called it George. I can't believe I'm talking about this.
George,
her little guy. George.
That's hilarious.
And the hardest.
I'm surprised it wasn't like Frederick.
Yeah, I know. And that is so funny that I told you that.
George.
I don't know why she called it George. We never knew anyone named George, but she called it George. And because, especially when she became handicapped, the way that they had the process of how the bag went on it, and I know for some people this is untasteful,
right?
But the process of how it was actually adhered to one was so archaic,
right?
And it would burst because your body, at that when you have an ileostomy, it's basically kicking out your acid in your stomach and your digestive juices. So it's very, it eats away at everything.
Right.
And so George would bust because you would have this piece of plastic that you would literally have to friggin' glue to your side. Now they have adhesive, whatever, but it was pretty serious glue, and you would have to put things. It would be like glue and then powder and then this weird like foamy plastic stuff. You know what reminds me of that stuff is like when you buy the stuff to put in your bra and make your boobs stand up.
Yeah.
One of those inserts that's kind of squishy. It's it was like that.
Not that I've ever used them. Patrick, stop looking at my tits. Go ahead.
So it would all this chemical reaction where it would all glue together and it would go onto your body, but then the body juices would eat at it. And so the hardest part physically for me at that time, and by the way, my mother, God bless her soul, the fact that she was like a fucking physical experiment for
Right.
doctors, it makes me so angry.
Right.
But as a child, it was my job, because she couldn't help herself, to clean it all up.
Oh my God.
And the hardest part, and by the way, I of course had, obviously I make jokes about
Right.
how I was pretty callous about certain things.
Right.
But other things, when your parent is suffering, you don't care. You're going
Right.
to help your parent. But it was my job too. I'd have to take like this stuff and try to get all the chemical off the hard piece of plastic,
Right.
which actually fit over George. And I would have to stay with hot water and scrub for like sometimes up to 2 hours,
No.
where my fingers would actually be bloody
Oh,
trying
God, I
to,
can't.
because you had to clean it all off in order for the adhesive to work again. So I don't know why I'm digressing
That
to this,
is
but it was
so-
very hard for my mother. It was very hard, very hard.
And as a kid, to be able to realize it's hard for her and not a narcissist, you're not like some narcissistic, like, it's all about me, is
Right,
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, who did did you do the grocery
Everything,
shopping?
everything,
Was there
everything.
any home health aid, any kind
There
of...
was, for a small period, because we were on welfare, there were a couple programs here and there, but
Yeah.
they would always be cut or put away. I think we had a home health aid maybe once for 2 years, but that meant someone came in once a week
Right.
to just check up. And,
Right. Did your mother ever yell, Felicia, George is full!
She, yes.
George is full!
Yeah. It was not.
I
good.
thought that was
Yeah.
funny. George
Yeah.
is full.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Patrick. All right, so you graduate high school.
I graduated high school, and I actually, when my mother had a stroke at the age, I think I was 14,
Yes.
things got really bad.
Right.
And my father, I believe, was in Germany at the time, and she, it was really terrible. And we were living outside of Colorado Springs that time, and she had to go to a rehab facility after they had stabilized her. And I talk about this in my one-woman show. My mother had a ring that was my grandmother's ring. And so whenever money was tight, which was always, all the time, she would always pawn that one ring. And then she would save up for a year and get it out and
Right.
then repawn it. But I was the one at 12
Yeah.
years old, from the time at 12, go to the pawn shop and pawn
Right.
a ring. And she got really... had the stroke, and I had it in front of me because she had not been feeling well and was at the hospital, and I had to go to get money for the electrical bill and to get that fucking ring that I needed to pawn to pay the
Right.
electrical bill, and she stroked out in front of me.
No!
Yeah, and it was at the
I
hospital.
can't. I
yeah.
cannot take anymore. Go.
But this is why I have a problem when telling this story too, is because at the time, when you're a kid like that, it affects you, but it bounces from you because it's all
You're
about
resilient,
you.
yeah.
So I remember there was probably like 5 to 7 doctors in the room at the time, and when it happened, there was a nurse. They all fled the room because they knew what was going on, and they couldn't look me in the eye. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I have a problem with that. When
Right.
people can't look me in the eye, that is a big issue for me. And,
Right.
as I was writing my one-woman show, I was like, fuck, that comes from when this was going down.
Right.
That they couldn't tell me.
Right.
Because I was a child.
Right.
And they couldn't bear to look at me.
Mm-hmm.
That it made them so terribly sad. And I understand that. And I have empathy for that. And but as the nurse pulled me from the room, I pulled the ring off her finger. And all I thought about is like, thank God I'll get to the pawn shop
Right.
before it closes so I can pay the electric bill. And then she was shipped after that to a rehab facility in Denver, and she was gone for about 8 months.
Where were you? Home alone?
I was home alone.
At 14?
At 14, yeah, which, it
In a
is-
trailer
No,
or
we
in a
lived
house?
a housing complex where the majority of it was people
Army.
on welfare or Army people, yeah.
Wait, so you're alone
I was alone, yeah,
at 14?
at 14.
And the state had no idea?
Every once in a while, a social worker would knock on the door, but I'd hide under the bed and stuff because and I'm so glad I did that because I didn't have to face the horrors that a lot of children in foster care homes,
Right.
especially back in the day, faced. And there are great, wonderful
But were
foster
you
homes.
sad? Were you like depressed and sad and
I can't say that.
jealous of other kids who had both parents at home, or?
No, I can't say that.
Wow.
I really can't say that. When you're in that, it was more about just survive to the next
And what about
day.
your teachers?
You know what? That was something that was always very quiet. Mm-hmm. Never spoken about really at school. Never.
So they
and we
didn't-
lived. You have to understand. We lived in a smallish town outside a bigger city, but in a part of town where my friends weren't even allowed to go. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like what
'Cause it was
mother
like-
of a
yeah.
14, 15-year-old's like, no, you go to that side of town where
Right,
all those
right.
GIs are doing drugs
Right.
and the welfare people live. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my
It wasn't-
God, you're such a survivor.
I am.
You should go on Survivor
I should go.
or The Amazing Race. I bet
Yeah,
you'd be
right?
good on The Amazing
I
Race.
probably would.
Wow, living
Yeah.
alone at 4. And you knew you had the druthers to get up, make yourself breakfast, make yourself lunch.
Go to school.
Buy
yeah.
groceries.
Well, and school meant eating because they had programs where
Right.
I could eat.
And did you stay at school as long as possible? What if you needed like a permission slip?
just sign it. Yeah. It was, and back, those days was different than
Right.
it is now where, we're going to text your parents and
Right,
call,
right.
both parents and everyone's
Yeah.
on an email chain. You know what I
Right.
mean? Those days were just
Oh
like,
my God, you could just forge letters. I was,
Yeah,
Felicia
right.
Felicia was very sick.
A community means more than the street you live on or where your home is on a map. It's the relationships, not the location, that matter most. You may have noticed your community has changed. Old friends have moved away, you don't know any of your new neighbors, or you just don't feel quite as comfortable as you used to. The Good Samaritan Society can help. Our senior living communities offer more than a place to live. They offer a place where you can feel at home again. Housing options that fit your needs, a staff that genuinely cares, and neighbors you can call friends. Our mission is helping those we serve feel loved, valued, and at peace. Let us prove it to you so you can get back to enjoying your community and everything that comes with it.
To learn more about the Good Samaritan Society, call 855-GOOD-SAM or visit good-sam.com today. That's 855-GOOD-SAM or good-sam.com.
So you then become a stripper.
well, what happened
Come on,
was
guys. How fascinating is this? How old were you? Were you 17?
I had just turned 18.
Just turned 18.
And what happened at that time was my mother was in and out of the hospital.
Wait, did your mother go to your high school graduation?
No.
Did anyone go?
No. I'll get to that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Sorry.
Because I want
Yeah.
I want to be able to color
Yes,
it in
yes,
as
yes,
much
yes,
as
yes,
possible. Because this is a big part of the one woman show.
Yeah.
There are so many children that help their handicapped and are caregivers to
Right.
handicapped, whether emotionally, mentally, or physically,
right.
parents. And the amount of pressure on me at that time, because when your parent becomes handicapped, when you're at that age,
Right.
it is one of the hardest things
To watch.
because it's your parent that you love. It's a hard thing to share.
Right.
But when people like have a stroke, emotionally they change.
Right, of
you know,
course.
and they're going
Their brain
through this,
changes,
Their
yeah.
brain changes. And so I became the parent to my mother.
Right.
And that was really hard because, like you said, I was cooking, I was doing everything. And I had lived on my own for, I think, 8 or 9 months. So when she came home, there was this fantasy for her that I would go back into the child position.
Right.
When it was A, I'm taking care of you.
Right.
And B, now I'm 15, almost 16, and fuck you. You know what I
Right,
mean?
exactly. Like,
So,
I was
yeah.
having a good time here, and now
Right.
you've, sort of disrupted my life.
And when someone becomes handicapped, they go through, not everybody, but my experience with my mother was they rely and lean on you so heavily, it blocks them from helping themselves sometimes.
Right.
And it would literally be like if something was within 5 inches of her reach, she would call me from my room. I would have to go give it to her.
Right.
It got to the point
See, that was
where she
when
was trying to passive aggressively trying to help herself, but control me in a
Right.
sense. And
that's when the texting could have come in handy.
that's when yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I had went, because this is all leading up to this, I had went with one of my first little boyfriends to go see Santana in Pueblo, Colorado.
Oh, yeah,
Santana.
baby! Santana! Yeah.
And I had spent the night and had come early in the next morning. And she had God, what do they call it when you urinate in a bag too? So now she had not only George, she had
catheter.
She had a catheter.
God damn it. Come on, Patrick. That was good. You didn't know what the fuck it was. Go ahead.
And she had bed sores. I mean, she was very incapacitated. And so I came home and I walked into her room and there was blood all over her bed. Right?
I can't.
But this was a big moment in my life because it was my understanding at that point in my life. You know, some people dig a hole so big for themselves they can't get out of.
Right.
And if you're standing on the edge, you are a very dangerous position to slip in with them.
Right.
And I called.
God, you're smart. Go.
And she said to me, Mom, because the phone was right by her hand. I'm like, Mom, why didn't you call, an ambulance? And she said, I just wanted you to see that you could never leave me like your father did.
Oh, my God. I thought it couldn't get worse.
I know.
What is going on here? It just keeps getting worse and worse, and I'm never complaining about my childhood again.
And at that point, I called the ambulance, and I ran away from home. And I eventually called my father, and he had been stationed and was living back in California. He had gotten out of the Army, was living back in California.
How old are you? You're 15?
I was
16?
I think 16 at that time. And I went, lived with my father outside of Los Angeles, and I did a continuation school. I stopped all contact with my mother because at that time I recognized this is not
healthy.
Okay. This is not okay. And I'm not servicing her by being at her beck and call.
Right.
And
it's not good for either of you.
I got to get the fuck out of here.
Did you feel guilty?
Absolutely.
Oh, my God. I can't even fucking imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And then she
And your father just took you in?
Of course he did. Yeah, of course he did.
And did you ever call him during this period and say, Dad, you got to fucking help?
That is when I called him and said,
You waited until that point.
Because I felt so guilt-ridden about leaving my mother. You know what I mean?
Of course.
I would assume now, and now I have a great relationship with my father. We went through a lot, but we have such a solid relationship. And at that time, I felt like everyone had turned their back on her. Her parent, her mother.
Right, of course,
saying,
her family,
you
left
married an American, you got out of here. So, and then
Auf Wiedersehen.
And then when I went to stay with my father, I went to a continuation school.
Right.
So I literally graduated high school. I think I was a junior then within 4 months because you could work at your own pace.
Right.
So I was like, I'm fucking going to buckle down. Me and all these people who are in continuation school because they're doing drugs and shoplifting. But I was like, I'm going to get the fuck out of here.
Right.
And I actually graduated high school, but there was no graduation because you worked at your own pace.
Right.
I got my degree, and I went back to Colorado because my mother came back out of another rehab.
So you were gone for how long?
Probably maybe 4 to 5 months.
And at that time, you had no contact with her?
I had no contact, and then at the end, I started talking to a lot of my friends who still were friendly with her.
Right.
And I knew she was back home. And in turn, it actually was a good thing because she did say to me, no, I needed to learn how to take care of myself.
Wow.
And so when I came back, our relationship
was different.
It was different.
Evolved.
Even though I was still the parent, it was different. But when I came back...
Wait, did your father at any point during that 4 months say, I'm going to go check up, or I'm going to call the hospital or the rehab, or I'm...
No, he did not.
Okay.
And about a year ago, I said to my father, why did you even marry my mother? Mm-hmm. And he said to me, she could just be a hell of a fun ride until she wasn't, and she had a lot of mental issues.
Right.
I have memories of my mother. She had like what that Sybil kind of stuff. Like,
Right.
Dissociative.
Wow.
She was very dissociative, where I wasn't talking to my mother.
Right.
I have many memories of that.
Right.
And so now as an adult, I can see it from his point of view.
Right.
Like, sometimes you gotta fucking save yourself.
Right. But you have a fucking kid.
Well, sometimes, you know what?
But you're a mother.
I have
now.
a mother. I have a mother now.
No,
Yeah.
you are a mother.
I am a mother.
You
yes.
are a
Yeah,
mother
yeah.
now. And there's so many times in my life where I think back. I mean, none of it is anything like your upbringing.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
But-
pain is pain.
Right. And you look at your kids, like when I think of parents who've left their kid, like I no way. You would never leave your kids.
I would never leave my kid, but also, I mean, look, here is a guy from Oklahoma,
Right.
no education, had to go in the army because
Right.
he shoplifted, and they were like, jail or army, goes
Right.
in the army, meets. My mother had an amazing IQ. She had like a genius IQ.
Well, hello, look at you.
But, well, that's very kind. But so he meets this beautiful,
Do you know what your IQ is?
It's not that like my mother. My mother had an amazing IQ, and so mine is just average. So
Yeah, that's what you think. Do you have to stop at 11:50?
no, I did my call-in.
I love you.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, good.
So I look at it from my father's point of view. I mean, she was beautiful, funny. I get that from her.
Right.
Bright.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's so too bad they did not have the medicine they have now. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It would have been a whole different. All right, so
when I asked him that, why did you marry my mom? And he told me, because she could be a hell of a fun ride until she wasn't. It was a great moment between my father and me because I understood that. I understood because who was he going to talk to about it?
Right.
I had a crazy wife at home. Who fucking wanted to hear that in 1967 or 1974? No one wanted to hear that shit.
Right.
And so, in fact, I remember when I was living in New York about 15 years or so ago, I never spoke about how I grew up. I didn't even tell my husband. He knew a little bit about the stripping, but I told that story to one of my girlfriends about my mother in bed with the blood. And she was like, your fucking mother, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, let's have this understanding.
Right.
When someone becomes handicapped, I can say, having gone through that experience, seeing my mother and how she handled it, not great, but she had a lot of problems.
Right.
I still, to this day, can't say, if that happened to me, I wouldn't act that
like
way.
that.
Because you don't know until you're fucking in the know.
I
You
know.
what I mean?
Like my mother just passed in June. But
so sorry.
thank you. The last, she could not walk, and she had, and it started actually, my father died in 1990. So it started a couple of years before this, where she would lose her balance, or they'd be walking down the street and then she'd start walking in circles, or she would start slurring her speech, and they never knew what it was. I mean, we took her everywhere, and as from having a sick mother, that women are hysterical. Oh, yeah, it's nothing. You're hysterical. And finally, they found that she had apparently, maybe from a fever when she was a kid, her cerebellum was atrophying very slowly.
Wow.
But I cannot tell you how many doctors I took her to. And I remember this, the one thing I remember, and I think it's because, I mean, come on, you're so sensitive. When you're a comic, you're just hypersensitive.
Yeah.
I remember, and my brother and sister are they're not emotional. They're not, they're just.
They put a lid on it.
They do, and I think kind of too much, but that's just my opinion. But I remember the one day when I looked in her eyes and I saw the fear. Fear. And that was the hardest thing where because you want your parent to be your savior, to be the person who,
Absolutely.
is on a pedestal. And I remember realizing her hysteria, her constant, her depression, whatever, the way, it took me till, I guess, in my 40s or late 30s to look in her eye and say, no, it wasn't that she was upset with me or this. She was afraid. And seeing fear in your parents' eyes is it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's how you forgive. I mean, you're such a forgiving person.
I'm a pretty forgiving person. And almost to my detriment, where I will give someone a million chances because I always try to walk in someone's shoes. It's probably how just luck of the draw I'm built, but probably also from the experience that I have. That person might be a dick, but let's take into consideration
I do
this,
too.
this, and this. But sometimes to the point where, I give it a little bit too much.
Now I'm like, you know what? Now that I've hit 50, I'm like, all right, I've worked so much shit out.
Yeah.
If you're over 50 and still talking about, it's like, come on.
That's how I feel too.
Yeah.
Especially when you have kids. As soon as, and I had kids later on in life. It's like as soon as you have kids, then it's like, nope, cut and dry.
Yeah,
you're
sorry.
crazy. You can't be around my kids.
Right.
Done.
So you're a stripper.
So when I came back to Colorado to be with my mother, I had graduated high school, and I think at that I might have turned 18 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
My timeline's a little goofy on that. But because my mother lived in housing that was paid for by the government and I wasn't in college, I was just lucky to get out of high school.
Right.
We were told that she would lose her housing if I lived with her.
Right.
So there I was, barely 18. Lived in we had no car. Lived in a town that was 20 miles to 25 miles outside of a city. There were no jobs. There was no bus service to the city. And I got married to a young GI. And yes,
oh my God,
hard to believe. Just like all the women, I would say
in that
90% of the girls that I grew up with.
Wait, was he cute?
It was fine. Yeah, it was fine. Yeah.
Was he smart?
And he's GI. I mean, I can't say he wasn't.
Right.
I absolutely can't say he wasn't.
Were you attracted to him?
I was attracted to the idea of I wouldn't live on the streets.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
do you think he loved you?
It was in an era. Of course, I think he loved. Of course, and I think I did love him too. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, but you're 18.
Right.
What do you know?
I know exactly.
Right.
Go.
So we got married, and then he became violent. I think he was 19, 20.
Right.
And the second time that he hit me, I was like, I am not going to get pregnant and be in that situation.
Right.
And I answered an ad and went and did a wet T-shirt night at the Peppermint Lounge in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Peppermint Lounge.
And by the way, I have to tell you, when I was 12 years old and a kind neighbor would take my mother and me to the welfare office or whatever, we would drive by the Peppermint Lounge. Always fascinated by the Peppermint.
Really?
Yeah, like I was old school tween, what I mean?
I used to have a joke in my act about if you ever want to piss your mother off, when you're driving in the car with her, stop in front of the local strip joint and say, "Oh, can you just wait here? I got to run in and get my check."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. So he was violent, but did you get really beat up?
He hit me twice, and the second time he hit me, I mean,
Wait, the first time was like, oh my God, I'm dying.
Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah. But then the second time was like, this is
go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself. And so.
And then you got divorced, right?
I got divorced. Yeah, but.
Did you have to see him again?
I saw him. I think when I moved to LA years later, I saw he had a lot of problems too in life. So.
Right.
And I wish.
God, you're so like. Oh, he had a lot of problems.
Well,
all right.
Everyone has a lot of problems.
Okay, so you're stripping, and you must meet. I mean. You're probably making a shitload of money.
Well, I did the contest, and I remember that I took my top off. And
did you feel weird? Like when you first took your
because my mother was German,
right?
And she was very European, and sex.
Oh,
was,
right. So the hairy armpits
savior
and the
of my
tits,
mother was that sex in those days. Sex was very shameful. She was never like that.
Right.
Sex was never. We had my mother could talk about anything. We had very open conversations about it. So sex wasn't a shameful thing.
Right.
With my mother, and that she had wonderful parts about her, and that was a really great thing that I loved about my mother. So I didn't care, Right. But I do remember I got boobies later in life, so they were pretty freshy.
Right.
Like all my girlfriends got boobies when they were 14. I got them like 17 and a half.
Right.
And it was like they were pretty delicious. I'm not going to lie. My ass, not so much.
They're still not bad at all as a lesbian.
Push-up bra.
Yeah.
So then I remember I was doing the contest, and I chose my song, AC/DC's Highway to Hell, because I figured if you're going to do it,
just fucking do it.
Have a theme song, go it all the way. And a man came up to me and he threw money, and he made it rain, and it felt like it was raining love. I swear to God, I was doing that whole like 80s, Bruce Springsteen, Courtney Cox dance, and I literally was like, I have found my calling. Like it was like I am sold. And so I did that, and I mean,
you couldn't have been a waitress. So all right, so you go.
I did find a job as a hostess at a restaurant. It was after I had stripped, and they fired me because I had been a stripper. So.
Oh, fuck them!
Yeah. So.
Guys can go fuck prostitutes and do whatever the fuck they want. All right,
it's not held against their soul.
Right. So you're a stripper. I bet you met the most incredible people strippers with unbelievable stories. No.
Yeah, and it was different then because that was probably 1982 or so.
Right.
Number one, the first night I did stripping, I met a stand-up comedian. That's how I became a comedian.
So he was
just in the audience.
As a patron?
As a patron, and he came up to me and asked me
That's disgusting!
And that's how I got into comedy.
So, let me so you take off, you didn't feel shamed or like an object or...
You have to understand, at that point in life, especially in that era, I had no power.
Right.
And when I took my top off,
you had power.
And I looked down and I saw the desire in men's eyes, that was fucking intoxicating.
Right.
And that's why when people are always like, strippers, and you're so held down in life. And yeah, there are absolutely those stories. But for my story, it was 100%. I see my path now. I won't starve. I won't ever be held
It was
down
like
by
everything's
going to
be okay. I got it.
It was a complete relief.
That was part 1 of Kill Me Now with Judy Gold featuring Felicia Michaels. Please tune in next week for part 2, also with Felicia Michaels. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Thanks for throwing us a good rating on iTunes, reviewing us, telling your friends about us, posting on your social medias and whatnots. If you like a show, it all really, really helps out. Supporting our sponsors. Thank you for listening in general.
And everything was wonderful. I'll see you soon. Thank you for the visit. So long.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with a Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.